I've had the Bigme S6 out of the box for a few days now, and I can tell you already that I quite like it. The natural thing to do when I got it out of the box was to make some live streams comparing it to the Tab Mini C, so here's what I found out in those. And I'll add a few extra thoughts that I've noticed since making those live streams using the device. And stay tuned in this one, because I noticed something in my earlier testing of the S6 that actually might be a bit of a make or break for you guys, a bit of a deal breaker either way. So stay tuned through the footage because I'll discuss that. Compare the Bigme S6 Colour with the Tab Mini C. Now at first they actually look pretty much like facsimiles of each other. Really is, the cases are almost exactly the same, but immediately there's a difference. Once you have opened them up, you can see immediately there is quite a difference in the design there. There is one difference. There's a fingerprint reader here on the Bigme S6, and I'm going to download the same PDF for reading on both. I've just got this Leonardo PDF here with just some things, so hopefully we can see how well they both perform. Interesting thing that I haven't really got around yet on the S6 is every single time you put it to sleep, its Wi-Fi seems to go off. I'm sure that must be a setting that I've got wrong rather than that. No, Alberto Prieto, there's no 13.3-inch devices from Bigme as yet, I think. So yeah, they look pretty similar to each other. They're the same screen. They're both the Kaleido free screen. They do have a similar type of case here. So it should have a pretty similar screen performance. Let's go ahead and go through the range of the lighting. You can see if I turn them both off, they should have a similar screen performance. They are the same actual panel under the hood, but you can probably see straight away this one does look a little bit lighter than this one. But if I actually zoom in and get a bit closer, you'll hopefully see this, to my eyes anyway, looks a little bit clearer than the Bigme does. So the Bigme is the white one on the right. I'll try and keep that the same. And that is because the actual screen surface of the Bigme is slightly more textured. They've gone for a more matte screen surface. So actually, to the naked eye, there's a little bit less clarity here on this screen. It's not a big deal. It's not a major difference, but it is a difference that I've noticed from sort of a little bit of time I've been using this. So this is all the way up. Well, that's the warm light on top there. And this is all the way up on the cold light of both. The actual Boox has come out slightly brighter there on all the warm lights. And let's go both lights fully on. That just changes the color temperature. So both lights fully on will be in the middle there. Yeah, really similar as you would expect here with almost the same screen. Really similar lighting, nice even light from both of them. And let's go for warm light there. I think they've got this the wrong way around, by the way. The night light for me is the warmer light. There you can see it there. And both of these, with all color e-ink, you're going to run them somewhere in the middle here. And they look great. Look absolutely great somewhere in the middle. So screen wise, we're looking at basically the same thing. I'll just say one more thing though about the case before we move on. You'll notice that the Bigme has the little page turn buttons there, which they do actually work. As you can see, work just fine. This is in a PDF. This is working very nicely, by the way. This is working just fine. This one doesn't have page turn buttons, but you can either swipe. And again, it's pretty quick, isn't it, to change pages. This is called X Reader and this is called Neo Reader. Very similar layout you'll see here. Very similar layout indeed between the Bigme and the Boox now. Let's go ahead and go to this manuscript here. Let's go to the same page in both. You can perhaps see the contrast is slightly higher here on the Tab Mini C. I'm finding it slightly easier to read on the Tab Mini C. Let's just look at the speeds. Similar performance there. But of course you can up the contrast here if you go into the E-Ink Center. And one thing that I really like about the way the Boox do it is they have the E-Ink Center more readily available. Here, when you go to a menu, E-Ink Center is just there, whereas it's slightly more buried away. And that's more often on the screen here. Although we use the settings of this app rather than this for full contrast. The Ink Center is a little bit more buried away there. But now you're going to immediately start to see the difference here, I think. I go slightly more contrast, which is called dark enhancement for some reason. You can see actually it just gets a bit impossible. Now let's look at a bit of text. Yeah, there's more clarity here on the Boox device. Let's look at this text. Not that you would want to read the text that small anyway. This is the Boox. Make sure it's nicely focused up for both. And then the Bigme, same piece of text, same size. I think there's more clarity, but there isn't much in it. They're both really good. The Kaleido free screen from E-Ink is really good. Okay, so let's have a good look at those. Screen performance in general. Let's go ahead and do some scanning around in Chrome. Now you'll see I'm in a different mode. Let's make sure we're comparing apples with apples here. So the fastest mode is called Extreme here on Bigme. I'm in the fastest mode on both, and here's where I think you'll start to see
quite a large difference. That's pretty, it is pretty well handled, but the ghosting is far worse here on the Bigme. And watch what's happening here on the Mini. It's actually clearing up. And that is something which happens on the tab devices. The GPU actually clears up the white space. There's ghosting, and then it actually clears it after you move something. I was quite surprised to see that when I noticed that initially. That is what the thing is doing, whereas this is not doing that. And it kind of waits for a full page refresh before it clears it. Similarly here, look, it looks wonderful. And let's go ahead and do different modes and see how similar they are. And the normal mode is where you're going to be, and the balanced mode is there. So they do give you an extra mode. They give you the fast mode on the Boox device. See here, the balanced mode is where I'm going to spend most of my time on Boox, and it still looks great for scrolling. And now it's just white as white. And now you can see in the normal mode here on the Bigme, and it isn't doing any clearing of it, whereas this is just comes crystal clear straight afterwards. If I go back to the drawing that I had, PDF that I had, we'll hopefully see that. It looks really, really good here. Another thing you'll notice is that you don't have widgets here on the Bigme device. So although they have gone for a more Android style operating system now, go to home, you'll see it looks more like an Android style thing. You cannot have widgets, it seems. Although I'm guessing you could just install your own launcher, which could offer you widgets. I think that would be totally possible. Because actually you just saw me use the widgets to go here. And this, in this normal mode now, look, this balanced mode, it just looks absolutely brilliant every single time. The Tab Mini C. The Boox Tab devices are getting the very best out of these e-ink screens. Although it's the same screen, you can see there's a difference in the screen performance. Is definitely the Boox device is better for that. But the last one to show you yet would be something like the fullest, the highest quality, HD quality, and you will see it looks, I've got to go back out into Chrome. So much open in this device. Here, and go into, you see the e-ink center lives down here with the Boox device, which is really useful. And go into the HD. It's not the highest quality, the Regal is the highest quality, but the Regal is unusable for scrolling. And you can just see the way this just doesn't get as clear ever. It takes longer and it's more jarring. Can you see that in here? Never gets as clear as it does on the Boox device. I'll go to the similar, I'll just go to images on both then, and sort of get you some color spaces and move that. You'll see the ghosting is real on here. You see the ghosting in that space there versus the blacks there. That's looking a bit worse now over here. I wouldn't ever use this full HD, the highest quality mode for browsing anyway. I would just live in balanced and be quite happy here on Boox. When I was testing it out just the other day, it was night and day, the difference between the Boox Tab Mini C and the Bigme. Same screens, but Boox are just getting a lot more out of those screens at this point. In every mode I found that the Bigme had ghosting. Okay. In every single mode. There was no way to get rid of the ghosting entirely, and there's no way to get rid of the ghosting entirely on any e-ink screen, but really the Tab Mini C, the tab devices from Boox have really well controlled that ghosting there. So moving on, both have Android 11 only, and yes, there is no way to actually update those because it depends on the system on chip for both. Okay, so we'll talk about system on chip in just a second. The battery life is where this is going to be won and lost, because it is well documented now that the tab devices, their use of the GPU is really making the battery not last as long as it should. Fully charged it today. I haven't had long enough to test out the battery life on the new Bigme devices, and I'll get back to you on that one. Well, it seems that the battery life is really bad on the tab devices, and if the battery life is really good on the Bigme, that itself might be a reason to buy Bigme over other devices. Now, software-wise, Bigme has improved quite a lot because they have given you an option when you boot up of going for the older school Bigme software with the kind of main apps down the side here, and then a weird kind of semi-app, semi-home screen in the middle here. And now you've just got a normal Android home screen, which is great. That's exactly what you want, in my opinion. But Boox have obviously thought a little bit more about this and have given you this smart launcher thing and the use of widgets, which are really, really useful on the devices. And there is still a lot more times where you run into kind of Chinese and this international device here with the Bigme. There's still a lot more times where you're like, oh, hang on a minute, that's all in Chinese and I have no idea what to do about that. It's not as bad as it was. The software has improved. The Boox software is better than the Bigme software is. There is another difference, which is that, as you see, there is a front camera here on the Bigme, and there is also a rear camera. And you'll be pleased to know that neither of those have camera bumps, so there's no issue there. So clearly, if that was something that was important for you to have on this tiny device, that would be a reason to go for Bigme over the Boox. There is no camera at all on the Tab Mini C. They've only put a camera on the Tab Ultra. Both, I think, have auto rotate, although auto rotate is off on this one. The other benefit of the Bigme over the Boox here is that Bigme has the fingerprint reader here. There is a fingerprint reader on this tiny device, this smaller device. There is only a fingerprint reader on the Boox, the larger, the Ultras. If your fingerprint reader security is important to you, then Bigme is really good. The system on chip is different for both of them because this one is a MediaTek. Now, tends to be MediaTek is your lower quality, lower price point processor. There's not a lot wrong with it. Both are octa-core and both are sort of similar speed. You've got 4 performance cores in both and 4 what you'd call efficiency cores. They seem to be pretty similar, although this is a Cryo and this is an ARM architecture. It is going to be a similar processor, but the point is here, this one has the GPU renderer that it uses. And I think most other E-Ink tablets basically don't really use the GPU, which is built into the system on chip. And that's how we're getting such great performance out of the Boox device. The screen performance is just better. It really is. You can see the contrast is better. I know you can fiddle with those settings, but I haven't fiddled with the settings. I've just left them as out of the box as they can kind of come on both of these devices. It's generally better. So you've got MediaTek here on the Bigme and you've got Snapdragon here on the Boox device. Both have Google Play. The cases are really nice for both. I probably just prefer the Boox case, even though the Bigme gives you those page turn options, and that will be something for many of you. There's it's kind of softer, less. They're both a bit faux. And this is very faux leather. It's not a nice feeling leather at all, I'll be honest. And this one is a bit of a plasticky kind of. It's not even trying to be faux leather. It's trying to be more like cloth. Not as nice, I think, but generally they're very similar to one another there. Pens are worth comparing as well. The fingerprint reader is really quite good there. You probably spotted that. The pens, well, you only get the basic pen here, which is, and whilst I do that, I'll go into the notepad as well, of course, which is, I think it's called the Boox Pen Plus. They're both Wacom. Imagine they've both got exactly the same nibs. If they're used on the same screen, they'll feel very similar. But the Bigme has this up its sleeve, which are your 3 buttons here, which are page turn buttons in any case. So even when you look at the bigger device, you've always got a page turn button here. And these sync via Bluetooth. It's really easy when you first do the unboxing to actually set up those so that you have them working with the Bluetooth. Very easy indeed. And the charging, the reason why it has any charge is so that it can do that Bluetooth. It's not so it can do the Wacom. And let's go ahead and look at some just sort of pens here. Basic pen in black. If you're someone who's all about that kind of paper-like texture, then the Bigme is the better device for you. That's the Bigme sound there. This is the Boox sound. You see, neither are bad. I actually personally prefer this. I personally prefer not sacrificing the clarity of the screen for that slightly more matte feel. But if I just show that screen off a little bit, they're both similarly controlled in terms of their diffusion of the point light sources. Probably the Boox slightly edging it. If you want to sacrifice that little bit of clarity, you can here with the Bigme. Pencil, the difference in the pencil, if I now start to show you some colors, is this pencil does not have tilt, whereas the pencil tool on the Boox device, the tab lines now do actually have tilt on them, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Same range of colors as well, although Boox is not the very best of the pen tools to go for, but if you want to go for color, it's your choice right now. I'm not going to spend too much more time in the note-taking apps. They're quite similar. They're very fully featured. You've got OCR, you've got text recognition in both. You've got things like shapes and all that jazz in both. I've seen layers actually, but maybe it's hidden. Can't see any layers on here just yet, but bear in mind there. Somebody asked questions about adding templates. You can certainly add templates in, and the templates you add in layers here. I know they've moved it. You can change templates really easily on both. So no distinction really in terms of, and it isn't the pen, it is the device that is allowing the tilt. And that, I really don't like the way it handles a highlighter incidentally on here, because the highlighter doesn't just do a line, it does a kind of area. Really not a big fan of that. Whereas the highlighter, again, I don't really like the way the highlighter is handled on Boox either, because the way the highlighter is handled on Boox, it doesn't go behind the writing, which is why wouldn't it go behind the writing, the highlighter? That is something that they should sort out. So it actually sort of makes the text more difficult to read when you use the highlighter here, which is not the purpose of highlighting. So I think there's one thing that I think is really disappointing about the Bigme, because the Bigme, the big thing which is going to catch your eye when you look at the specs of the Bigme, the big thing is that it has a SIM card tray. So of course, first thing I did was to put the SIM card into that SIM card tray, and it did not log on to my network, although it recognized there was a SIM card there. And then I dived into the actual user guide, the manual, and I found that yes, there is a SIM card tray. It does support 4G, but not in anywhere apart from China, it said. Southeast Asian networks. I did confirm this with Bigme. The cellular connection only works in Southeast Asian networks, essentially. So this is something that I'll talk a little bit more about when I talk about this comparison, because Boox themselves are shying away from using cellular networks in, like, for instance, their Palmer device, which was clearly designed to be a phone, and probably there will be a phone for those Southeast Asian networks pretty soon, but it won't be coming to the entire world.
And that's the thing, it should be a really great selling point that they've actually included a SIM card tray in the Bigme S6, but the fact that you can't even use it in the UK or the US is just not even worth really mentioning, and for me it shouldn't really be in the spec sheet when you're selling it to those countries. So if any of you are living in a Southeast Asian country, can you please let me know what the experience of mobile connectivity on e-ink devices really is, because at the minute there's nothing really for a Western market with that 4G connectivity. But maybe it isn't Bigme or the other ink tablet companies that I should be really riled at here. Maybe it's actually something to do with the networks not giving them permission to put these devices on the UK or US networks. They don't seem to have got that issue with a lot of other companies, but I've gone off piste here. I hope you liked the video anyway.
We've got Boox here on the left and Bigme on the right. If you really want page turn buttons on the pen, then you can have that. The pen also has this funny like laser pointer. Like, I don't know what I would use a laser pointer for. It's just, you know, you're holding a pen and you're almost going to end up accidentally pressing that button. It happened to me just yesterday, and shining the laser into your eyes. But if you particularly want to put a laser pointer on a pen, it's there. It also works as like home buttons. So if I go into something and then I press this button, it should just take me back a step. Or if I'm a few steps in, it should take me like, if I hold it down, it'll take me to home, and I can actually change it. And then those are your page turn buttons as well. So that's a useful thing to have on the pen really as well. No keyboard included at this size. We'll talk about keyboards when we talk about the larger devices there. The white bezels are, yeah, I've heard this a couple of times. The white bezels are honestly distracting. I'm not convinced. I mean, it's not something that, like, I've used this device an awful lot, which is the Note Air, and okay, they're grayer bezels. And I think that's probably the best shout, is matching up the tone of the screen and the bezels, probably. I don't know really, but the black's quite nice. Black certainly makes it feel like it pops out in terms of its contrast. I'm not sure I'm really going for either over each other. They do not have the latest version of Android. They're both Android 11, but they do both have full Google Play Store. So there's occasional points where you're going to be finding a app that only works on Android 13. It's not going to happen very often, but it might do. I much prefer having the Android buttons here, and there are sort of gestures that do the same things here, and you've got the floating ball here, but the floating ball is something the Boox used to have, and they've kind of not given up entirely on that. It's still there, but they've kind of moved away from that and gone to a more Android sort of home screen. So I hope that in an update they bring just ordinary Android style sort of home, recent and back buttons, please. It would just make a lot more sense for us all. And the battery life, well, the battery size is much different. So the battery size on this Bigme device is only 3,000 milliamp hours. And the battery size on this one is 5,000 milliamp hours. But don't think that is the only thing which is going to dictate the actual battery life. I think the battery life will be better on the Bigme. It was 98 when I started this live stream. I think this was 71 when I started this live stream. I think they've gone down by about the same. So you never know, they might be very similar. And if they are similar, then it's definitely the Tab Mini C is the one to go for. And I've talked about the 4G isn't working, which could be amazing. If they could allow this on all networks, then this would make it really good. I actually got really excited when I saw it had a SIM card, and I thought I'll put my SIM card in there and make it a bit of a mobile thing. But it was a no-go in these regions.